Yeah, right?
What does the go live button say now?
End broadcast.
Oh, there. Okay. Sweet. All right.
Okay, oh, here's your mic. Okay.
Welcome, everyone. Salt Lake Azure Group meeting. Good to have you all here. First thing, just want to thank STG for sponsoring us again. They sponsor us every month, and I really appreciate everything they do. Does anybody want to do a lightning talk today? No? No, me neither. I was going to come up with a tech tip, but then I didn't, and I forgot. And so the tech tip of the day is use ChatGPT. There you go. But don't trust it. Use it, but don't trust it. That's the tip. Okay, so today we're going to have a presentation from our co-organizer, Dallin. Dallin Farnes, been working for STG for 14 years, for a long time. He's one of our top Microsoft guys. He's been doing a lot of great stuff. He's going to talk to us today about static web apps and how to use AI from those. So static web apps are a really great way to host stuff for cheap, and we're going to learn all about that today. So does anybody have any questions before we start?
Static web app.
So static web app is, you're going to find out. All right. Okay, well, I'm going to let Dallin take over and wow us with his knowledge. So thank you, Dallin.
All right. Excuse me. Put the microphone back on now. All right, so like Troy said, we're going to talk about static web apps and also some OpenAI and Azure Functions. Just a little bit of everything. To start off with, what are static web apps? I think static web apps are super cool. It's a service in Azure that gives you the ability to just host a static website. So that could just be HTML, it could be Angular, just basically your front-end application. Whatever, your JavaScript, TypeScript application, you can stick it out there and it's just going to run and as if it were running on any other server. And the cool thing about static web apps is that there's a free tier. There's two tiers. They have free, and then I think the other one is standard. We'll see it in a bit. I have a number of different applications running as static web apps because they didn't require a backend. And so because of that, they just run for free. Hey, Gordon. How are you?
Good.
Good. Grab a sandwich.
Oh, thanks, dude.
Yeah. So let's jump in. What we're going to do tonight is in lieu of slides, we're going to build a whole application, beginning to end. I'm actually going to walk through not just the code, but also the how to create the different Azure services that we're going to be using, and then we're going to set up a pipeline, a CI/CD pipeline using GitHub Actions. And it sounds fancy because it is, but it's super easy with like 2 clicks of a button. Static Web Apps does it for us automatically. So let's start off. Oops. Hold on, my mouse is stuck inside OBS. Okay, we're good. So let's start off with not doing static web apps. We're going to start off by creating some OpenAI stuff. Let me actually pause there. So the application we're going to build and deploy and test, it's going to have a front end running on a static web app. It's going to be a super basic UI with just a text box or a text area and a button. And we're going to use that to give a description of an image. And then using OpenAI, we're going to generate an image. So we'll have our static web app as our UI. It'll send a request to our API, which is in this case going to be an Azure function. And then the Azure function will consume the OpenAI service to generate an image. So to start off, we're going to create our OpenAI service, and then we will start building the code for this application. So I have gone ahead and signed in. We're going to create a new resource, and we're just going to search for OpenAI. And please, if you have questions, speak up. And if I've talked too fast, tell me and I'll slow down. Slow down. Oh yeah, let's turn off the camera. Nobody needs to see me. We can have extra screen space. Camera. How's that? Oh, it's a little delayed, huh? Okay, we good? All right. So we're going to create this Azure OpenAI service. And we're going to create a new resource group tonight. Let's call it Skynet, yeah. We're going to call it the Slag Static Web App OpenAI. Because I lack originality. What I should do is create a name generator that uses OpenAI to generate images, or not images, to generate names for me. We're going to leave it here in Eastern US, and we're going to give it the same name as the resource group. It doesn't really matter. And then there's only one tier here, standard, so we're just going to choose that. Excuse me. And we're going to allow access to all networks. In a different environment, you may want to restrict it, but we're just going to leave it open. I'll probably say this about 3 more times during this presentation, but I'll leave the code up that we create during this presentation, but probably sometime tonight, I'll actually shut down the OpenAI service so that people who are watching the stream can't just go in there and go crazy.
No writing bots.
Right? So. Exactly. So we'll run it tonight, and you guys will. The reason we're going to delete is like you'll see the endpoint that we're going to use and the key. So you'll see everything, and so, but you also see how to create your own, which is pretty easy. So we're going to let that run for just a second, and while it's running, we're going to start working on our project. So we're going to create our new, just a blank solution. We're going to add a couple different things in here. So we're going to just call it Slag SWA OpenAI. Again, I lack originality. Oh, that opened up over here. Hold on, let me drag it over. So here's our blank solution. We're going to add 3 projects to this solution. So the first one is going to be just a standalone Blazor app. This is what we're going to host as in our static web app later. And let's name it Image Generator App. I learned the hard way, you cannot name it app because Blazor has a file named app. And I went to build it and it was like, this doesn't work. So. And you would think that's a lesson that I would learn. I've done it several times now. I'm like, yeah. All right, we're just going to keep the defaults here, .NET 9, and we're not going to add any sample pages. We're just going to take the empty home page. All right, here is our pretty empty Blazor app. We've got a home page. This is where we're going to do most of our work. let's add another project. Excuse me. So we're going to add an Azure function, and we'll just call this API. And it's going to be an HTTP trigger, and we're going to change the authorization level to anonymous, because we're not worrying about security tonight. That's a whole topic all by itself. So we're just going to write cool code and deploy it in cool places. All right, there's our static, or our function. We will get rid of that and put something better there in a bit. And then the last project we're going to create is a class library that's going to have two models in it that we're going to use to facilitate communication between the API and the app. It'll just, and both of those projects will use the same models. So we're just going to call this shared and .NET 9. Looks good to me. Okay, so while we're here, let's just create those. So we're just going to use this file that I've already created. We're going to call this one image request. And it has a string of image description. And then, actually, let's, because I hate warnings, just put an empty string in there. And then the next one, this one is going to be our image response. And we're going to call it image source. So, and we're going to make it not null. So this, our API, or our app is going to send an image request as a description, and it's going to get back from the API a URL to the image that matches the description for the image that we've just created. Okay, moving on then. So the first thing we're going to do in we're going to jump back over to our Blazor app. And in the Blazor app, because I don't want it to be completely ugly, we're going to add Bootstrap. Just because it'll make it a little bit easier to just do our layout. Okay, now we have Bootstrap. On our home page, we're going to put a couple different things here. So the first thing we don't have is our code. Our code section element. And we can get rid of all of this. And in the interest of time, I will copy this over and we'll talk about it. So we've got, oh, hold on. Before we, let's add a string image description. And then let's do private. We're going to make it nullable. Okay. So this is our text area where we're going to put in our prompt for the image we want to create. And we're going to bind it to our string down here. The next bit of markup we're going to add is our button. And we need a little bit of code for this, but this is going to be our generate image button. Okay. It's going to be bound to this method called generate image. And we're going to make it asynchronous because we're going to send, if I could type, because we're going to send an API call out. All right. So that resolved. There's that. Is that a good size? Can you guys see the text okay? Is it? Okay. All right. And then the last bit of markup we're going to add is just the image. So here's our image element with the source mapping to this image URI or image source URI, and it's just in its own row. This won't show up if image is null. So when this loads, if we don't have an image, it's not going to do anything. In fact, we can run this and it won't do anything yet, but you'll see our basic UI. Let's just build that and get that up. And it opened it on the wrong window. Oh, it's still loading. I was like, there's nothing here. Spinning still. There we go. Okay, so there's our text area and our generate image. Doesn't do anything yet because nothing exciting has happened yet. Okay, let's shut it down. And let's go. We're going to come back to this to add some more code here, but let's work on our Azure function, our backend that's actually going to do the call to OpenAI to build the image or to generate the image. So that's going to be in our function. And normally you'd create a different file. We're just going to leave the one we have here and just delete function 1. And we are going to get this function. So we're calling it generate, and it is a post, and the authorization level is anonymous. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? There's nothing there, really. Okay. Fix that curly brace. All right, we need a couple a couple NuGet packages here. The first one we're going to add is we're going to add Azure AI OpenAI. Like this, Azure AI OpenAI. 10 million downloads. So we're going to grab that. That's going to give us the SDK that we need to make our calls out to the OpenAI service on Azure. And then we're also going to get Newtonsoft for some JSON stuff.
Why use that one versus the one in .NET?
It's a habit. I like it. And he works for Microsoft now. So I don't have a good answer, just that I like it. So
I didn't know if it was prudent.
yeah. Okay, so let's come back to our function. Okay, so Azure functions work a little bit different when you're sending an object to them when you compare it to like something like a web API. So we've got to get our object that we're posting, that we're sending in, and we're going to use this snippet of code. So we've got our, oh, hold on, we'll fix that. We're reading in from our request body, storing it as a string, and then we're going to take that string and deserialize it into an image request. This is one of those classes we created in our shared model. And then if it comes back null, we're just going to say it's an invalid request payload. And we're just going to add a reference here to shared. Here we go. Okay. The next thing we're going to do, and actually, let's just pause here and let me show you guys, because the next thing we're going to do is some stuff with the OpenAI stuff. If we come over here to our Azure, this is our OpenAI service that we created. Our resource group, we've got one item in here right now. We'll add more stuff to it later. But right here is our OpenAI service. And we're going to go out to the Azure AI Foundry portal. In the portal, this is one of my new favorite toys. I've been playing around with stuff out here a lot. there's some cool things out here. So if you wanted to build like a chat client, you can, and they'll even give you, and I don't have one created in this resource group, but they'll give you different examples, like code examples that you can just grab and drop into your code, into your application, and they work. The one we're going to use tonight is actually images. We're going to do an image creation one, and you could actually just play around with it right here and prompt to create images, but we want to do it with code. So to do that, we're going to come down over here on the left to deployments, and we're going to create a new deployment from a base model. And this, I love this experience of being able to choose the model you want. I've actually built a couple applications lately with the GPT-4o Mini and found that it's actually really good. I really like it. And the 4o Mini is really affordable. So that could be a whole nother topic if we wanted to play around with that one night. We also don't want to get everybody bored with too much AI stuff, you know. But we're going to come down to this one right here. And maybe one of you guys know. How do you pronounce this? Is it Dale E? Dal E? 3? Dolly? No, okay. I was contemplating that yesterday. I'm like, I'm going to sound like an idiot when I say it wrong because I don't actually know how to say it. So that's what we're going to create. And we're just going to leave it with that name, Dally 3. Okay. Okay.
Oh, this.
I know, but it's spelled completely different. Yeah. Okay. We will create that just with the default settings. And the reason we're... Oh, that's weird. Well, hopefully that's okay. We'll see. Actually, yeah. It's okay. It'll be fine. I think it's funny, though, that it did that by default.
Maybe it's your accent.
Yeah, that's it. The reason I wanted to jump over here first, to jump away from the code to come over here, is because we're going to get, the next thing we're going to do in the code is actually add in our Azure OpenAI endpoint and the key. So we need those. While that's spinning, let's just go back to the code, and I'll show you guys the next snippet we're going to add in. And we're actually going to add variables right here to store them as strings so you guys can see it and kind of appreciate what they are and why they're there. But then before we deploy this out to Azure, we're going to remove them and replace them with environment variables. And again, we'll just keep that code up in my GitHub so you guys can go out and check it out anytime you want. So the next thing we're going to have is we're going to create an image client. So, oh, hold on. We want that there. So we just deployed a DALL-E 3 client, and we got to have that name in here. So what this does is this is going to create our OpenAI client at that endpoint with this key. It's pretty simple, and we just initialize it to an image client, and then we'll copy all of this over. So you can actually, there's a lot of different size options. If you want, like the default when you do it, I think is square, like that right there. But I wanted to do something bigger. So we're going to keep 1792 by 1024. And then we have our image client that we've initialized up above, and we just say generate async or generate image async. We give it the image description that we typed into our UI that we passed in as a posted object, and then we pass in the options, in this case just the size, and we get back a response. So with that response, we do have to dig into it a little bit. So this is our image response from our shared library with image source. This is our URI, and then it returns back a URI, but it's a nullable object, so we got to go response.value image URI, and then we're just going to return that back to the app, back to the front end app. There's actually I tried to get this working, and in the end, even ChatGPT could not help me. they have an option in here to return the image bytes instead of the image URI. And I'm like, that would be cooler. And it's always null. I haven't been able to figure out over the past week how to actually get the bytes to be populated.
It has to be with food.
Right? Take a bite. And I looked in the options up here. I couldn't find it, and then I wondered if maybe it was an option that you had to enable out in the model that you just deployed, and I couldn't find anything there. So I decided we would just play around with the URL, a generated URL. The URL that it actually generates, it gets stored in a temporary storage that they provide with an expiration date of several days out. So I can't remember how many days, but it actually shows up in the URL if you were to inspect it. So, okay. So we need our API endpoints stuff. So, and there's a reason we're not going to go straight to the environment variables, because I want to show you guys, this is the endpoint that it created, right? There's a lot of garbage here that we don't actually need for this example. So I clicked the copy button. If we paste it in here, we're going to erase everything back to there. It gives you that whole endpoint. All we want is the actual service. We don't want all of that extra connection string. However, it doesn't work. Yeah, I'm sure there's a use case for it, but all of the examples I've seen, they copy it and then get rid of all of it, because even the demo that I saw back in November during .NET Conf, he copied the whole connection string and then said, get rid of the rest of this because you're not going to need it, at least in these cases. So I'm sure there's a good use case for it, but we don't need it now. So, and then the key, we're going to copy that. And it's a good sized key. So get a good look, memorize it. Okay, this is it for our backend. This is our whole API call. We get an object, we initialize our OpenAI client, and actually here, we're not going to change it, but I'll show you. When you initialize it, you can get all these different clients. There's our chat client, audio client, all the different clients that they support. That's you use the same method of initialization, and then you just choose the one you want. So we, in this case, are using image client. So, and then we create our image and we return it back to our front end application. Are there any questions about this before I move on? Okay, so let's go back to our front end application. So, which is going to be the static web app. So we are going to, and actually, because Blazor is kind of weird sometimes with the tooling, we're going to do this. We're going to add a project reference to our shared project. Explicitly like that. Okay. And using shared. Okay. So now down here, we want an image request. We're going to call it request. And we're going to say image description. I can't type. Image description. And then we're going to send our request as, before I finish this line, let me show you guys, just to be thorough. This might be redundant in case you guys already know this, but our Blazor app on startup created an HTTP client that we can use. We have to, it registered the service, and we just have to inject it into our controller. So inject HTTP client. Okay, so then down here, HTTP client, and we're going to post as JSON. And we're not going to run, because we're living dangerously tonight. We're not going to run this locally. I'm going to use the connection string, or the path that we're actually going to see when we deploy the whole thing out to Azure. So the API, our Azure function, is going to be deployed under API, and it's called generate because our function has the name generate. That's our route, right? So cannot see. There we go. That one. Generate. And then we've got to, it's a post, we're going to send our request object. And then, so that's going to send it out to our Azure function. And we're going to, I like to do it a little separately, but we're going to say data response. We're going to read our response, read from JSON async, image response. That is, again, that's our shared object in our shared library, our response object, like that. So we get our response, we read the whole thing, and now we have an actual object that is an image response. It is nullable. So let's data response. And now we're going to take what we had in our response, and we're going to assign it to that URI. We're going to assign it there to our image source. So image source response image source. Okay. Are there any questions about that? Okay, cool. There is something else I want to do here, because we're making a call out to an Azure function that is then calling an OpenAI service, which we could actually call the OpenAI service directly from our Blazor app, but then that means we have to expose our connection string and our key, and nobody wants to do that. While we're not worrying about security tonight, that's just bad, right? So because this could potentially take a few seconds, we're going to put a spinning icon in it, because I like shameless plugs. So, hold on. I have the Blazor spinner. I published it, and because I'm presenting, I get to advertise it tonight. Go download it and use it in your own Blazor applications. You can see it's reputable because it's been downloaded 228,000 and a half times. So, we are, and interesting enough, this demo app is also a static web app. So you could go out, try the static web app. We are just going to add it to our project and browse. I cannot see that little tiny Blazor spinner. That's the one. So we install it to our project. And then there are a couple steps we need to do to just make sure it can run. We've got to add a using statement to our import. So right here, there's our using statement. We're going to register the spinner service so that we can inject it into our component. So right there. And we're going to create the actual spinner element. Oops, that's not the one. Layout. So the spinner service will actually hide or show or hide the spinner as necessary on any page anytime you want. So on some of my other applications, I actually built it so that anytime there's an API call, it uses the service to automatically show the spinner. That way you don't have to call it or stop it on every single call. It just does it automatically. And then the last thing we need to do, well, not the last thing, but the last of the setup for it is inject it into our component. Now down here, before we start our generate image request, we say show the spinner, and when we're done with the request, we hide it. Okay. I think this is it for our code. We should just build the whole thing and just make sure that I didn't make any weird typos or anything. I was telling Troy before we started, we're breaking the cardinal rule of presentations. Don't do anything live. And all of this is live tonight, so hopefully it's not a complete disaster. All right, so we've got, let's just recap real quick. We've got our front end application. We've got our markup where we can create the image description and send a request over to our Azure function that will then generate the image using, well, it'll send a request to OpenAI to generate the image. We get it back. When we get it back, it will put it into our image source object, and then we'll be able to see this fantastic picture that we generate. Okay, so before we gotta send this over to GitHub. Before we do that, we're going to, I promised you guys we would get rid of this stuff right here. So what we're gonna do instead is just use environment variables like this. So environment variables, we could have set up environment variables locally as well. What I'm going to show you guys is how to do this with the Azure Static Web Apps, where to set up the environment variables. And that should be good. So now we are going to, so this is the Azure function. You're right, but the function is going to be hosted as part of the Static Web App, and so we use the environment variables in the Static Web App. Yeah, I'll show you that. It's kind of, I actually had to look it up. I was like, can environment variables in a Static Web App, are they secure, or can they be read by a front end application? They can't. They're only accessible to the back end APIs. So we are going to create, hold on. Yeah, okay. Create a Git repository. It's going to be its name. We're not going to add, actually, let's add it. We'll add the unlicensed. And we will make it, well, let's see. That's the account. That's me. You guys can go out and look it up. Well, actually, we're going to go out and see it here in a second. And we'll make it public so that anybody can see it. And, oh, yeah, I didn't save the function after I changed the environment variables, those right there. Okay, so that's out there. Now this, our code is done. We've created the whole application. Now we just need to deploy it as a static web app and try it out. So if we go, well, I should have had GitHub open, sorry. We're going to go to GitHub, repositories. Here is our new repository. And, oh, it added our license, good. What we're going to use is, we're going to use actions to actually to build and deploy the application. But Azure makes this really easy for us. We don't have to write a single line of YAML, which YAML's not bad. Everybody should love writing YAML, but in this case, we don't need to do it. We're going to keep that Foundry open. We're going to come back to our home here and create our static web app. This is the moment you guys all came for, is actually the static web apps. All this other stuff was extra. We're going to add this to our OpenAI resource group, the one we created earlier. Give it that name. All right, so we're going to use this free for hobby and personal projects because I think it's awesome. We could pay for it. The standard tier is $17 a month. And I'll actually show you guys, there's a side-by-side comparison. Well, we could compare the plans here, but I'll show it to you later where you can see what you pay for and what extra stuff you get. So then we're going to deploy it using GitHub. We choose our organization. The repository should be at the very top. And then master, okay, this is pretty cool too. So it's going to detect that we have a Blazor app. You could put anything else you want in here. You could, down here at the bottom, it's custom. But if you just want regular HTML or Angular, React, it's going to load those presets so that it can run, so that you can run that application, the front end application here, which I think is pretty cool. So it has detected that was the location, our image generator app, that's the Blazor app. And then our Azure function is under the API location. It's going to host the Azure function under the free tier. And I don't know this, but maybe you do, Troy. Functions, you get 1 million executions per month per subscription for free. But when you host an API as an Azure function, everything I've read says that it's just free. I actually didn't see any limits on it. What I did see was a limit on bandwidth, but I didn't see any limit on execution amounts. So yeah, we might have to, right? Hit it 1 million times. So 1,000,001, yes. Okay. And we're just going to create that. And then it does a couple cool things here. So it's going to do this deployment real quick, which this only takes a moment to run. You can see, okay, it created our static web app really fast. And we're gonna explore this in depth while the application builds. But one of the things, before we dive into this, one of the things I want to show is that by creating the static web app and associating it with the project out on GitHub, it has created our YAML file for us. So if we come over here to code, you can see now it created this GitHub workflows folder, and it has created, and this is always the fun surprise. You get a name that's just completely random. This is Green Sky. That's not bad. There's been some truly odd ones. But then this is the YAML that it has generated. It's going to build and deploy and then close the pull request. It sets up all of the Azure secrets, or not the Azure, the GitHub action secrets automatically for you and links it all together, which is pretty handy. So I think it's very cool. So what we can see now is if we go over to the Actions tab in GitHub, it's already started building. And this will take, I think it usually takes about 3 minutes. We're a minute in. And we're not going to sit here and watch all of this scroll by, but it's building the application. And then when it finishes building, it's going to deploy it. So while it's doing that, because we don't actually want to watch it scroll by, let's look at the static web app. So this is the URL, Green Sky. That's what it's actually given us. That's where it's going to be hosted, where we can access it at. What's interesting is that a lot of services, when they allow you to host a website for free, let's just say an HTML site, they, in order to actually associate a custom domain with it, you actually have to pay money. You don't have to do that here. You could associate your own domain with it, even being in the free tier. So you could just come over here to settings and go to custom domains. And by default, it already has the one that it's set up, and they give you an SSL certificate for free. I think it's, oh shoot, what's the free service that everybody loves? I don't remember. It gives you an SSL certificate. You can hit add, and I use Namecheap for my domain registrar. You click that, you enter in your domain, and then it will give you the different strings that you need to validate ownership of your domain. All, again, under the free tier. Let's actually look, so under hosting plan, let's compare that because I keep referencing the free tier. I love what you get under the free tier. So 100 gigabytes of bandwidth per subscription. I'm assuming this is all per month. Included band, and there is no, it's free for overage. So I think that,
mean it's unlimited?
yeah, I guess so, right? The maximum size of the app is 250 megabytes, but that's a lot of code. They even give you staging environments. So a lot of other things in Azure, if you want staging environments, you pay for those. You pay per staging environment that you spin up. This is the big difference right here. Managed, so we're doing an Azure Function managed app versus just going out and consuming our own API or our own Azure Functions that we self-manage. The experience of actually monitoring your Azure Functions here is much scaled down in compared to what you get with a more traditional Azure function. That gives you all of the monitoring and other stuff. So, but you can see that that's $17.52 a month. So I don't think that's too bad.
Where do you manage your Azure function?
So under APIs right here, that's where it will be. And you don't really manage it. It's kind of a black box, honestly. I wish they had some more monitoring. You can see the number of times it gets hit, but it doesn't give you any more additional.
So there's no log stream.
No, there's not. Mm-mm. You can add app insights. I was actually playing around with this last night in our code. So under the API, under the Azure function, it actually gives you this that you can enable, but I've not tried it out. Okay, that's not entirely true. I tried it out. I didn't finish getting it working. But this might not be available in the Azure Static Web App, because this is still just a regular Azure function, and you could use this in a traditional deployment of an Azure function. So if we come back over here, you actually do have right here application insights, and it doesn't really show much. I let this sit here last night when I was just going through stuff, making sure everything was working, and it just sat here loading for quite a while. So I'm not sure what's up with that, but
You know what you're doing. You don't have to do any troubleshooting. Really good solution.
well, because it's free. Yeah.
Scale it, no one else.
I haven't tried it. I don't know. That'd be maybe a good something we could try. Well, again, we'll hit it a million times and see what happens.
There you go.
Yeah. I think it's pretty responsive. I have noticed that just like loading a cold application, it's not cold. It's just loading files. I think there's, and I'm making stuff up here now. I think that the whole thing is supported by Azure Blob Storage or file storage, and that's fast, because again, you're just serving up files. So as far as scalability, I don't know the details of it though. So let's go over that. Okay, so back on GitHub, our build finished. And before we actually run it, I forgot about this. Environment variables. I said we were going to do this the right way. So environment variables, these cannot be read, like I was saying earlier, these can't be read by the front end application, whether it's Blazor or Angular or whatever. These are only accessible to the code that's running in the API. If I'm wrong, then I read something wrong somewhere. But what I read is, because I was concerned about security. I have another application that uses this exact same architecture and is storing secrets and stuff. And I was like, I want to make sure that my secrets are secure. And what I found was that secrets that are stored in your environment variables cannot be read by the front end. So, okay, so let's. Nope, I haven't added it yet. We're going to do that here. So. Because, okay, so we want that name right there for our API endpoint. Oops. So there's our name, and we got to go grab our endpoint here. The whole thing, but then we're going to delete it because we don't need it all. Apply. And then we'll add our other secret. I keep going down to that other window, but it's in another tab. We're going to copy the key. See, I did it again. Tried to switch windows. And key. Okay. So now apply. Okay, so we have both our keys here, both our secrets, our environment variables. We got to hit apply. And it should be good. This is the moment of truth. So 50 minutes we've been waiting for this to see if it actually works, right? Okay, so we're going to go just to our URL, or the one that's generated. The Blazor app loaded, and you'll notice it's HTTPS because Azure, they give you the SSL certificate for free. What should we generate?
I want an image of SpongeBob
Huh.
eating a hot dog.
Sponge Bob, like that? Is that how you spell SpongeBob?
B.O.B.
B-O-B. SpongeBob eating what? Eating a hot dog
on a merry-go-round.
on a merry. I know, right? Let's try that. Okay, here's our spinner. Shameless plug. Use it in your own applications. This is why I added it. I actually, when I was prepping this demo, I was like, oh, I hate waiting for this. It just feels like it's broken. I'm like, we got to have some feedback to actually know that it's running. Yes. Probably not. Oh, it did break.
No try catches.
No, there's not. But you can actually see, hold on, what happened. It did break. You can't see it very well down there, but we did get a console error. I know, right? What have I done? So it got a runtime.
You got your information back.
Yeah. Here, let's run it again. I actually have a working version of this, so if it doesn't work, I can actually show it to you guys. But it might have to do with the Australia thing too. That could be weird.
Yeah, let's see that.
But actually, let's try something. Let's just try a different description. A purple penguin on the beach with a panda. So here's our generate. Okay, that worked. So there's our picture. Here, let's zoom out just a little bit. It didn't help. Purple penguin on the beach with a panda. Oh, yes. Apparently, maybe it's because I misspelled something, right?
That should be.
Say a photorealistic.
This spelled penguin.
Ooh,
Just take out the end.
Photorealistic.
a photo realistic purple penguin.
With Donald
I don't know if it'll do.
Find out.
Here, let's act, because I'm paranoid now, we're going to open the DevTools to watch. I actually found that there is a limitation on the number of requests you can send at a certain time too. Well, if we had decent air logging, we could look at it's this right here.
Wait, post.
Oh, yeah. No, it didn't return back the error because we weren't that verbose. Let's try this. Let's get rid of Donald Trump and see. Let's just say photo realistic purple penguin. I was trying this out last night with my kids and they kept giving me ideas. And then my wife was like, hey, have it do an ad for this stuff that she sells. And I was like, I don't think it's going to be able to do that because it's not actually going out to the internet and getting stuff. So you can actually tie it in. There's actually a way in the with the AI client here, you can add they call them functions, where you can do a lookup so that when it's doing the call, it uses this function to go do a lookup in this database or this data source.
Well, I think some models are more current.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, there's our photorealistic purple penguin. Oh,
They could have spent on it.
maybe. I was trying last night. I did a starship in the form of Star Trek. Good thing we have a spinner, so that we don't know if
Except when it breaks.
yeah, except when it breaks.
That's sweet stuff.
I know, right? Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Just took a second to load. That's not too bad, right? That's Star Trekky. So here, let me show you guys this. If we look at the URL, can you guys see that? Okay, up there. So there's our image, right, in storage, where you can see it. Just put it in some random storage. Yeah, but then so it's valid for the next 2 days. Looks like. Oh no, from today's not the 13th, and then but that says the 18th over there. So okay, let's try it. The Starship Enterprise D. Yeah, I'm actually rewatching Next Generation right now. I should have put 1701. Sure. Yeah. Actually, I think it fails fast though when it does fail. We should clear it. Well,
Wow, that is exactly
that's the same ship we just saw. It's just from a different point of view.
Engines on both sides.
That's-
And that's where Marvel, or actually, Iron Man.
Spider-Man.
See if it even knows what the trademark for Spider-Man is.
Let's just do Spider-Man. Yeah. That's,
I think
Yeah.
Rock has a lot fewer guardrails.
oh really? Is that the new Chinese one?
Yes, Superman X.
Oh, is that okay? Hey, that's not.
So now do SpongeBob and see if it breaks it. Then we'll stop.
I don't know where it
That's
gets
the same
Starship
thing you did.
Enterprise.
Oh.
Just instead of Spider-Man, do SpongeBob.
Oh my goodness. Sponge. Bob. I
Using up a lot of tokens. This is gonna cost you pennies today.
know, right? Yeah, there we go.
Wow.
So,
Apparently SpongeBob has more legal power.
right?
Yeah, right.
So,
I think it's just enough to help the trademark. If it says it in Sony.
so actually, we could try here. Let's try this real quick. Instead of doing it through our code, if we come over to the playground right here,
Well, that should get into a little bit more.
SpongeBob with a sandwich. Generate. Okay, so
Safety system.
yep, that's interesting. Okay, so let me show you guys a couple things to wrap up. Under deployments, no, yeah, metrics. Here we go. So we can see, and it's delayed. Never mind. Oh no, you can see right here. So we had some requests per minute. We had 6, right? That's It's not too bad, right?
Your token usage is
Well, the token, yeah, it'll show up later. Over on the static web apps, we do have some monitoring. So these are the requests that came in, right? We've had a lot of requests just going back and forth. And some of these actually include deployment requests, right? Data out, function hits. So we hit it a few times in that minute. I expect we'll have another dot here in a moment too, right? And then function errors, you can actually see it did actually catch the errors. We have the errors here. So I was also going to show after it deployed, because you were curious what sort of management we have, which is 0. But if we come in to managed, we can see that we have a function, but that's as far as it goes. So, but interesting though, like, I mean, if you're confident that the code is going to run and it's resilient and you're handling the errors as you should, then you could just put your own logging in too. You know, you could push it out to a separate logging service if you wanted to. Also under, let's just go back over to the overview. Under deployment history, this is common across like all of Azure. They'll show you your different deployments and stuff, but we can see that we had a successful deployment. And it's linked to GitHub. Even though this ran, you can actually see it. It points it out here. See, it ran successfully on GitHub. These are all the steps that ran as part of that GitHub action. And so it's pulling that data from GitHub. If we go over to GitHub, there's everything we had there too. So, any questions? Any other attempts for weird pictures?
Have you tried connecting it to a database or anything like that?
Yeah, I have. You just have to, because it's just an Azure function. You can connect to a database. So depending on your database, you might have to pay for that, right? Because this is the beacon of freedom. But an Azure function can connect to a database just fine. Are you referring though to this database connection? Yeah, I haven't tried this one specifically. This is a new feature, and so you could link it to one, or you could just put your connection string in as an environment variable and link it out to somewhere completely different too. If you want to keep it free, maybe I'm being a penny pincher here, but MongoDB actually has a free tier out at their Atlas offering. So if you can host, or you can have up to 500 megabytes on their free tier. So
if you don't use too much, you can use the Azure serverless option. It has free capacity also, but I found that it doesn't last very long.
Yeah. You could also put stuff out on like blob storage or file storage. There's a yeah.
It's not free, but it's cheap.
Yeah. So anyway, these are some of my favorite toys: Static Web Apps, OpenAI, and GitHub. I love GitHub Actions, so it's fun to see that actually do the build and deployment and everything. So, like I said, I'll make sure this code is available on GitHub. You just have to go to github.com/Dallin, and then it'll have, I deleted the I, there we go. So you guys, if you want, you can download the code and run it and maybe add some air handling. So, okay, that's what I have for the night. Thank you.
Thank you, Dallin.
Mm-hmm.
I did want to mention one thing actually. So I mentioned it before that I didn't have a tech tip for the day, but I actually, as I was sitting there, thought about it. A tech tip. Does anybody here use PowerToys for Windows? Do you? Have you tried the advanced paste?
No, I haven't.
So there's this feature in PowerToys. If you use Windows, you really should install PowerToys. It's really cool. They have this feature called advanced paste, where you can go copy something into the clipboard, you go paste it somewhere, and you can give it a chat GPT prompt on how to modify your text before it pastes it. So I use it sometimes. I copied some C# code, a big C# method. I went to paste it into VS Code. And I said, convert this to TypeScript, and I put in some other things, and then boom, it converted it, pasted it in there, and did it based on my problem. Now, the only thing is that you have to have a paid account in ChatGPT, because you have to provide your API token in there. But it's really cool. If you're not using PowerToys, I suggest checking it out, and definitely check out the advanced base settings. So that was something that I thought I'd have a lot of sense. I didn't want to leave you guys hanging on a tech tip this month, so that's it.
One thing I needed on this presentation is this would work if you're running Blazor servers.
Right. And I hate lasers.
If it's not obvious for people who haven't used Blazor.
No, this is a bad.
You know, as I was looking at this, as you were going through this, if one single feature makes Blazor better than everything else, it's the fact that you can share models between the front end and the back end. That right there is the most, rather than creating a JavaScript object and a .NET object and trying to keep, no way, man, you use one. I love that. That's awesome. So, okay, well, thanks for coming. Next month, I'm not sure. I think we may have a .NET Aspire presentation.
That's me.
Yeah, that was you. Okay, are you going to be ready for that? Okay. So, have you sent me the?
I will.
Okay. I've only asked you 4 times. So. No. So yeah. So we're going to do a .NET Aspire. What is it?